everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we are going to be talking about 1999 Sleepy Hollow and its brand new 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Paramount. So 1999 Sleepy Hollow was directed by Tim Burton. It stars Johnny Depp in their third team-up after Edward Scissorhands and Ed Wood, Christina Ricci, Christopher Walken, Christopher Lee, and Michael Gough, or Go. I'm not too sure how to pronounce his last name, but he actually cast Christopher Lee and Michael Gough in this movie because they were most known for their involvement in Hammer horror films back in the, in the 1960s and 1970s. And Hammer horror had a huge influence on this movie, not just on Tim Burton, but on the entire production of this film. It's based on the classic story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and the Headless Horseman. And it's funny enough because I remember the Headless Horseman mostly from Hey Arnold and the Tale of the Headless Cabbie, so it's funny I came to that first before I actually even came to this movie, Sleepy Hollow. But I'm such a huge Tim Burton fan, and one thing about Tim Burton is I always just love his production design. That's one of my biggest attractions to Batman, Beetlejuice.
It's showtime.
Creates these worlds, these beautiful looking, gorgeous worlds. And his huge influence on him in this movie were those 1960s and 70s Hammer horror films. And he was really intrigued with how they were shot on sound stages and how everything does look like it is produced. And that stuff also really works for me. And that's the thing that attracts me most to this movie is its production design. I think it's gorgeous. It looks just absolutely stunning. The cinematography in this movie is probably Tim Burton's best. It's definitely his best looking movie. It actually won an Academy Award for its production design. That's how beautiful it was. They have the bright red blood. That's another thing that's a throwback to the Hammer horror. And, Tim Burton really was paying homage to the films he loved at this time in the 1990s. He did Ed Wood, which was really just a tribute to Ed Wood, the director, one of the worst directors ever, but that movie, Ed Wood, is probably my second favorite Tim Burton film behind Batman. Then he did Mars Attacks, which is just an homage to the 1940s, 1950s alien invasion films we were getting. And now this one is an homage to Hammer horror films. Just driving home that Tim Burton is a fantastic director that wears all of his influences on his sleeve. It's funny because I heard in a podcast recently that Tim Burton can't really tell if a script is good or bad or not, but he's such a good visual storyteller that when he combines his talents with a great script, that's how we end up with a great film. And Sleepy Hollow, for me, it's not one of my favorite Tim Burton films, if I'm being honest with you guys. It's a good one. I enjoy the production design of it. Johnny Depp is doing a good enough job acting, even if he's doing that, that swarmy, wormy character in this. He plays Ichabod Crane, constable sent up to Sleepy Hollow to investigate the killings of 3 people up there who've had their heads completely decapitated. So when he gets up there, he starts to interact with all the townsfolk, one of them played by Christina Ricci, who would end up being his love interest in this movie. And she's very much a one-note character. I love Christina Ricci. The first movie I ever saw in theaters was Casper. I feel like all the acting performances, I get what they were going for in here. We're supposed to be paying homage to certain other characters in other films, but they all just kind of feel one note for the most part. They're very over-exaggerated in a lot of aspects, especially Johnny Depp. This is definitely one of those Johnny Depp performances up there, like with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where it just doesn't work for me entirely. I get what he's going for, but when he's playing these wormy characters where you're just trying to add these certain characteristics to him, he's done it so much that it kind of just, I don't know, it doesn't work all the time, and then in this movie especially. And really, it is the production design that is driving this movie along and really gets me invested in it, because I'm not too invested in the story and the plot. It's not really something that grasps me, and then I'm not too satisfied with the conclusion at the very end of it. And I think that's what holds it back from being a top 5 Tim Burton film for me personally, is just that I don't think the script is that well written. I don't think the screenplay in general is that great. I mean, it does give you the conclusion, it gives you all of the answers, but I don't find those conclusions and answers that satisfying. So for me, really, it's just this amazing production design, these beautiful costumes that they put everyone in. All that stuff is really what keeps me coming back to this movie. It's the perfect spooky season movie because it just feels like fall and autumn. Even at the very end of this movie, we shift now into winter, so this movie took place in the fall, and it gets that feeling perfectly. The dead woods, all the leaves everywhere, all that stuff just works amazingly. I just wish I enjoyed the story and the plot a little bit more. But anyway, we're also here today to talk about this new 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Paramount, and that's what we're going to do right now. But before we do that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, lists, podcasts, and shorts, nothing helps this channel out more than by you just simply liking this video and subscribing to the channel.
Down. Turn this horse. Came back.
Well, here it is, Sleepy Hollow on 4K Blu-ray, courtesy of Paramount Pictures. They also released a beautiful looking 4K steelbook that was pretty hard to get. I tried to cancel my order for this one last week and grab that steelbook because apparently it's something new. It looks like it's got a book in it, and I kind of wanted to get my hands on that, but it was sold out everywhere that I could check, so I ended up just keeping my pre-order for the slipcover edition, which is also really nice. I actually like what they did here with the orange up top, really just leaning into the colors of this movie, which is just absolutely gorgeous. So when you slide off the slipcover, you get the same artwork underneath. This does come with a second Blu-ray, and it did come with a digital code. You come inside, it is a Paramount release, so that means you get your Blu-ray in blue and your 4K in black, and that is it. No individual disc design, but I did appreciate them giving us the second Blu-ray. They don't always do that. That's something I've been complaining about lately, is the fact that we always just get the 4K and not the old Blu-ray, especially if they're not going to put any extras on the 4K, and that is the case with this one. Your 4K is not going to have any extras on it. All of your extras are going to be on that second Blu-ray disc, and it's all previously released extras from the 2017 Blu-ray, which is exactly what this is. There is no differences as far as that goes. It's the exact same disc, just packed in here, but you do get all those extras. Not many of them. There's trailers and previews, but there is a really cool making of documentary that clearly came out in 1999 to promote this. They even have the guy doing the over-exaggerated voice explaining every aspect of it, but it's still a pretty good making of documentary, and that's one of my favorite extras. You also get a commentary track, so it might not be loaded with extras, but the extras that are on here are pretty good, so I'm very happy with that. Now, the audio is a DTS HD 5.1 on both the Blu-ray and the 4K. We got no changes to that, but I do want to always point out that Paramount does give you a lot of choices of languages and subtitles, and I really appreciate that because not every studio does that. Most studios actually will just give you an English track and English subtitles. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get Spanish subtitles, but that's not the case with this one or most Paramount releases. I mean, they load up the Mission Impossibles with plenty of different languages in both subtitles and audio tracks, but you are just going to get the same DTS HD 5.1 as your standard English track on both the Blu-ray and the 4K. No changes at all, and that actually kind of bothers me. That's really my biggest negative, is the audio track. I had to sit there with the remote the entire time. The beautiful Danny Elfman score, it would just keep rising and building, but it got so loud, and same thing with all the special effects, the thunder in the background, it all became just so overwhelmingly loud that you had to turn down the volume, but then they would go to a quiet scene right after that, and they would be speaking dialogue, and the dialogue is just mixed so low that now you turn the volume back up, so you have to sit there with the remote the entire time, and I feel like 6 years was long enough. I think we could have got a brand new mix, even if it was just a brand new DTS HD 5.1, but just mixed a little bit better. Turn up the dialogue volume so you could just set it at one volume throughout the entire film instead of having to keep going back and adjusting it as you're watching the film. I find that to be the most frustrating thing. It would have been really cool, and it would have worked out so good for this if we would have got a Dolby Atmos track or even a comparable DTS-X track, but we didn't get that. That's like the biggest miss with this, because when we get to the visuals, we get HDR10, Dolby Vision, we get the works here. They fixed the aspect ratio from the previous Blu-ray, which the original aspect ratio of this film is 1.85, but the previous Blu-ray had it in 1.78. So now they're back to it just being in its original aspect ratio of 1.85. And I mean, these visuals are absolutely gorgeous. That Blu-ray isn't that old, but it is a huge upgrade to 4K. The Blu-ray, it's a little bit blurry. That's one thing I can honestly say that you'll notice right away is the huge resolution increase. It's very flat looking because the colors of this movie are intentionally flat, and when you see those bright colors at points, it's supposed to pop off the screen, mainly the Hammer horror bright red blood. So that stuff's supposed to pop, and on the Blu-ray, it just doesn't come flying at you like it does on the 4K. I mean, the blood looks absolutely gorgeous anytime there's flames on the screen. The first time we're introduced to the Headless Horseman, played by Christopher Walken, with that bright orange, you can clearly see it inspired 300 background, and it just looks beautiful. All that stuff is just going to be coming in vivid and dynamic. I mean, the HDR and Dolby Vision, they were very comparable. I checked them both out, are just doing such great work on this 4K. It's just going to blow you away with how good it looks. The blacks are so deep, the colors are just so natural looking, so real looking, in a world that's supposed to look artificial on purpose. This world that you want to get transported to, not the real world intentionally, and it all looks so good on this 4K Blu-ray. I mean, the skin looks natural. There's a lot of close-ups, and you're noticing every little blemish on Johnny Depp's face or on Christina Ricci's face, like things you probably would have never noticed on Blu-ray or especially on previous DVDs. You can just see it all now on this 4K. I mean, they just did such a great job on the visuals. The visuals for this are a 10 out of 10. Some of the most beautiful visuals you're going to see. I know why they picked Sleepy Hollow to come to 4K, and it's because of how good the visuals could look. This is definitely Tim Burton's best looking movie. It's probably the most beautiful looking world he's ever created behind Batman, and I can honestly see why this movie was picked before a lot of other movies in his filmography to come to 4K. Like, we still haven't gotten Ed Wood, Mars Attacks on 4K Blu-ray yet, but this world he created had to be seen in 4K, and I can honestly say it's one that you have to see on 4K whenever you get a chance. I just wish that the audio kind of matched up to the quality of the beautiful visuals of this one. Same thing with the extras. It would have been cool to get some new extras on here. There's just not many on here. Even if I enjoy the extras, the ones that are packed in on that Blu-ray, I do enjoy them, but there's just not enough of them, so the audio and the extras just don't match up to those incredible visuals, but those visuals are beautiful, and if you're a fan of visual improvements or just seeing something in the highest of quality, you're gonna want to check this one out because it is absolutely gorgeous, and I'm glad it's here just in time for spooky season. So if I was gonna give this entire 4K package a score of 1 to 10, I have to give it a 9 out of 10 just because those visuals are just absolutely stunning. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed my review here of Sleepy Hollow, and if you want to continue to see new 4K Blu-ray reviews every single week, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, get out in those streets, and tell your friends about us. And we'll be seeing you around.